All right, so in quarantine, I've been watching my fair share of Netflix, and one of the things that I watched was season 6 of Alone, which is a really cool survival show where they stick people out in the wilderness, and it's a competition. So whoever is in the wilderness last wins this like big prize. And without spoiling anything, one of the contestants on this show is somebody who's really into hide tanning, so turning animal hides into leather. And it just got like this itch in me scratching because I've done some workshops with the Maine Primitive Skills Gathering on hide tanning, but I have never fully successfully done buckskin hide tanning. And so this fall, now that I have time in quarantine, it was something that I was interested in, and I actually just got a couple of deer hides, and so it seems like it's time to get to tanning. What is up, everybody? I am Isaiah, and I'm coming to you guys this fall with a very exciting project, something that I've never really done before. I'm gonna try to make brain tanned buckskin out of some deer hides that I recently got from a hunter friend of my family. So I have tanned some hides before, but this particular process, making brain tanned buckskin, is something that I am attempting for the first time right now, and it's my first time attempting it at home. I've done some other tanning at some workshops, but I've never done home tanning before. So I was thinking that I would videotape this process, and we'll see how it goes. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure if it's gonna turn out totally right. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos. I've practiced some similar methods before. So yeah, I'm super excited. But what I'd like to do first is I'd like to talk to you guys about, one, some of the things that I've done in the past, and then also about the equipment that I have and the difference between brain tanned buckskin and other types of leather. So I'm gonna start by showing you this hide, which is the closest thing that I have made to brain tanned buckskin in the past. And this is a goat that I got at a workshop. I think it came from a farm. And I tried to do some hair-on brain tanning with this one. But as you can see, it kind of turned out a little rough, right? It's not entirely like nice fabric. It's a little tough. You can hear it, how it shuffles around, and here's the other side of it. So this is something that I attempted in the past, but wasn't 100% on point. Typically with brain tanning, you're not gonna have the hair side like I have with this goat hide right here. It's just gonna be this kind of soft, suede-like leather on both sides. And so what I'm gonna do with the deer hides that I have is I'm gonna scrape the hair off, and so both sides are gonna be nice and soft, and hopefully I'll end up with a product that's a lot more supple than this guy. The leather that you might be used to seeing is kind of like, maybe like the cover of this journal that I have, where you have one side that is shiny, and then you have the other side, which is matte, right? And so on the animal, the shiny side is obviously gonna be the outside layer of the skin, and that's waterproof. And then on the inside, that's the inside layer of the skin. And so what you're doing with brain tanning is you're actually trying to get rid of this waterproof side, and you are trying to retain the suppleness that any animal's skin naturally has. And our skin is naturally supple because it has water in it, so it's hydrated, but skin actually has these glue-like molecules inside of it that when they dry out will turn really, really hard. Like if you ever had a dog and you give your dog a rawhide bone, that's what happens to skin if you don't treat it with some sort of process. Now, in order to make this kind of industrially produced leather, they will use a lot of really harsh chemicals, but brain tanning is different because you're actually, until the very final step of brain tanning, which is smoking, not changing anything chemically within the skin. What you're actually doing is lubricating the fibers inside of the animal hide so that they don't dry like a glue. The way that you do that is you get oil that can penetrate through the skin, and that has to be a water-soluble oil because the skin hydrates. And so you need water to be able to carry that oil into the skin fibers. And that's why it's called brain tanning, because brains are actually full of water-soluble fats like that. And there's other substitutes like egg yolks are very similar. The egg yolks are super fatty, but they're emulsified in water. And you can also use soap in water with oil, and the soap can help break up those oil molecules and make them more easy to emulsify. Brain tanning is using any one of those emulsified fats to enter and penetrate the skin, lubricate the fibers inside the skin, and then if you keep those fibers moving as the water dries out, it'll leave those fats behind and leave you with a very flexible, really beautiful leather material. Now, what I'd like to do is show you guys the equipment that I have. All right, so we'll start up here with this big, kind of sketchy looking contraption. This is my very homemade fleshing beam that I just used a long 2x4 that I sawed in half that I found back in the rhododendrons over there. Put the beam, which is a PVC pipe that I got from the hardware store. And this is 6 foot of 4-inch PVC pipe. I nailed these together, very sketchily fastened it in place with some duct tape just so that this doesn't slide up and down so much. It is roughly above belt height, I would say. The fleshing beam is used for this process called fleshing, which is when you take your hide, and if you imagine that this hide is fresh off the animal, so it'll have a bunch of fat and membrane and maybe even little bits of meat still stuck to it, and what you do is you throw it over your fleshing beam and you get your fleshing tool, and it has a sharp side and a dull side, though the sharp side isn't actually sharp like a knife. And you'll use your fleshing tool to scrape down the hide like this, and that will take off all of that fat and that membrane and allows you to get your skin totally cleaned. There's a lot of scraping involved in this process. That's pretty much the first thing that I'll do. But that's your fleshing beam and your fleshing knife. Then I have my 5-gallon bucket, which I'll use for, there's various parts of the process where you're soaking it. You're gonna soak it in the brain solution. You're gonna soak it in either water or an alkaline solution at one point, which we'll get to later. But you'll need a bucket. I also have this kind of wider mouth bucket, which I actually think might work better than the 5-gallon one. So just in case, I have the second one. I have rubber gloves in case I don't want to get my hands dirty from the hide, but also there's a part of the process where there is a mildly corrosive solution that I'm gonna make with some wood ashes. And so this is to protect my hands from that. And then the last piece of equipment that I have is those wood ashes that I was talking about. This I just took out of the fireplace after a fire burned down. So that is all the equipment that I have. 90% of it, I would say, is free. I purchased this and this extra bucket. And my total cost for this is probably around 30 bucks. And then I have my hides. So I have one hide that's a little bit smaller. And this is from a doe. And then I have my second hide, and this one is a little bit thicker and a little bit nicer. So my plan is to start with the thinner, smaller one and have that be my practice one, and then move on to this bigger, thicker, nicer one. One of the things that I like most about trying to do this kind of thing is that industrially produced leather is terrible for the environment, terrible for the communities that live near the leather processing plants, and also terrible for the workers in those factories, and potentially bad for you because they have all sorts of nasty chemicals on them. So being able to make leather in a nicer, more natural way is something that I think is super, super interesting. It's very much the same kind of interest as going out in the woods and finding, plants and stuff. How to think about food in a way that isn't tied up with, these larger industries. And, it's free. I mean, I got these hides for free, and obviously there's a lot of work that goes into it, but I'll be able to make some leather for free, which is pretty sick. And I don't have anything better to do because it's the pandemic. So yeah, I'm gonna move on to the first step, which is fleshing. But thanks for listening to that little introduction. I hope you guys learned something, and I'm excited to get started. I hope you are too.